Hey y'all, welcome to another hobby. Today's hobby is starting a YouTube channel for the first time. To do that, I was going to start with making a logo and an animation for the intro, the animation you just watched actually. First, I started out by trying to make a 3D cube that I wanted to rotate around and put the logo on it and make it look like a hand-drawn rotation of the A and the H. But overall, it just ended up being a big waste of time, so I'm just skipping through all this really quickly. I saw me working in Audacity a bit there, just trying to get the music clip to the length I wanted for the intro. And then I exported this cube into images, brought it into Clip Studio, and traced over it, trying to get the lines to line up, make it look like it's actually kind of moving through 3D space, but found it looked a little too stiff, a little too actually 3D and not hand-drawn enough. I then tried to just go in and do it all by hand and try to animate it without following any cube to keep it more natural looking, but it was just a little bit too difficult to do. In the end, I ended up trying a bunch of other logo ideas and animation ideas, but just never quite got where I was wanting it to go. So I gave up on this whole idea. As you can see, I'm like 2 hours into this clip, just went back down to zero. Every time I started a new clip, it started at zero again. So this whole process with this first cube thing probably took me like 4.5 to 5 hours before I gave up on it and just ended up working on the intro that you actually saw at the start. There's going to be a hard cut here where I forgot to record for a bit. Just as I started on this actual intro, I ended up getting those flappers done and the text, and this is before I changed the A and the H to match the logo that I ended up going with at the end. But you can see me sketching out here the character sitting at a chair and working on all these separate hobbies. I ended up doing, I think, 6 different ones, plus thumbs up at the end and thinking at the start. And then this is me going through and animating each of the flipping cards, I guess you'd call them. And here, trying to fill things out using a color palette early on that was a lot brighter yellow and red. I felt like it would catch the eye more, but I ended up kind of going away from this idea. I wanted something a little bit more chill feeling, something that was a little bit more relaxing, since the vibe of my channel I was hoping would be not like super intense. Here I'm working on a second frame for each of these animations. I ended up going with 2 per hobby, just so it has something going back and forth, a little bit of movement. Here's where I start working on the actual logo, trying out a few different things, different colors. I ended up going with this like perspective view so that the lines are all pointing towards the corners of the diamond. This is me deleting the old letters off of these panels and putting in the new ones from the logo. You can see with the logo, I went with a green and a blue, but I ended up changing that again later. After trying out this green and blue color, it ended up a little bit too muted, a little too dull. So in the end, with the one you saw earlier at the start of this video, I kind of went with something a little bit in between. Still red and yellow, more eye-catching, but just a little bit more of a muted version of the red and the yellow. You're doing these smear frames on all of these animations. I end up doing some for the A that I didn't end up using because it only ever flips the once, so you don't see like the top of the A ever flip down. Here I'm working on the lettering, fixing up, the first attempt was pretty messy, not very straight. And going through and changing all of the colors to this muted blue and green, which I didn't end up keeping. I actually ended up changing the colors a few times, so I didn't end up recording all of it. Every time there's a cut, like the one coming up right here, there's the timer had to start over, and there's a little bit I ended up working on in between stuff. I'd say that this whole section where I'm actually working on the animation logo that I kept in the end was probably about 8.5 hours total. So if you count all the stuff that I didn't keep, I've worked on this whole thing for probably about 13, 14 hours maybe. But in the end, I was pretty happy with how it all turned out. You can see this is where I start getting in the actual proper coloring, and I add in the beard because the character was just a little too plain looking. So probably more I could have explained, could have gone through this a little slower, but I didn't want it to take too long. Even if I forgot to record some stuff, I hope that it was still interesting to see the process. To end this video off, I'll just play the animation again at half speed so you can see how it actually all animates. And that's the end of my first video. Hopefully it wasn't too boring or too chaotic. I'm still going to be finding the balance here, figuring out how much I want to do time-lapse and how much I want to do recording it as I go, explaining my process. I figured for this one, for learning purposes, I'd just do a voiceover top of a quick time-lapse and kind of explain what I'm doing. Keep it short, keep it hopefully a little bit more interesting. I realize this being my first video is probably going to be one of the worst ones, so I'm just going to be okay with what I got. Thanks for watching me explore another hobby, and have a good one.